Hi, this is a Nova training video for the K12 Strong Workforce Program, and today we're walking through the Round 7 application. Now, Round 7 is FY 24-25, and this application is due on October 11th, 2024 at 5 p.m. In this video, we're going to talk about access to Nova. This application is being managed by the Nova platform. We're going to talk about different roles that are available and how collaboration works. We're going to go through the process of starting an application, go through each of the sections of the application, and then we're going to submit the application and talk about different support resources available. This grant is being managed in the Nova platform, which is grant management software owned by the Chancellor's Office. In order to apply, you must have an account. If you already have one, great. If you don't, go to nova.cccco.edu. URL's right up here. And on the front page, you're going to see this login page, and underneath that, request access to Nova. Go ahead and click that, fill out the form, and the help desk will create an account for you, usually less than about 24 hours. And then one more thing, if you already have an account or you're getting a new account, there are no special roles or access required to start a K12 SWP application. This is true for most competitive applications in the system. Any user can create an application. Now let's talk about the different roles available and how collaboration works. There are two roles associated with the lead agency, the project lead contact and the project lead alternate contact. These are both required roles. The project lead is in charge of everything. They can edit or submit the application, the plan, or the fiscal report. The project lead alternate similarly can edit anything. They cannot submit anything. Submitting only happens with the project lead contact. Then you have these two required roles down here. Project contributing reporter is required for every partner agency. They do have limited editing capabilities, and on the fiscal report, they have the ability to edit the specific chunks of that report for their particular agency. And the last required role is the project viewer, or AKA contact, for a collaborative partner or higher ed partner. This role doesn't really have any actual abilities to impact the plan, application, fiscal reports, anything. They do have visibility. This is a visibility only role, and it serves as a point of contact for that agency for any questions that come up. In addition to the required roles, we can create project contributor and reporter roles for collaborative partners and give them limited editing capabilities. And we can also give this visibility only role to a partner agency for anyone on their team that just wants to have visibility. The last thing I'll mention is that project lead contacts are typically included in any sort of messaging that goes out from the Chancellor's Office about this grant. The rest of these roles may not be. So make sure that whoever you have as the project lead contact is the person that is the point of contact for this grant. And now we're going to talk about starting an application. I'm going to skip the first 3 steps here because we're going to do this in real Nova, but I did want to point out that there is a limit of 3 applications per agency per the RFA. This is both as partners or leads, so your organization can only be on 3 applications in any role. Once you have a Nova account and log in, this is the homepage for Nova. K12 SWP is located under Programs on the left-hand side. And then to find the applications, we click Applications. And to create an application, we click this Create 24-25 Application button. Choose our improvement name. This is called a type ahead field. So you can start typing the agency you're looking for. If it's not there, if you can't find your agency, you can also do a search by CDS code. You can click here. It'll prompt you to fill out a help desk ticket, and they will add it for you. But assuming you do see your agency and we have a name here, we're going to hit continue, and that is going to create our application. And before we look at the application in Real Nova, I wanted to point out a few things to you. Number one, over on the left-hand side, this is called the workflow. These are all the steps that we'll need to complete for this application to be done. Over here on the right-hand side, I want to show you the error stepper. See where it says 1 error here. Any requirements, and the requirements you'll see from these little red stars next to the questions. Any of the requirements, if they are not filled out, are treated as errors. So this is just saying there's one thing on this page that's not completed. This can say 1, it can say 42. But those are all the things you still need to complete. And if you have a long list of checkboxes to fill out and you missed one, This is a really good way to figure out where that is, because if you hit that show button, it'll take you to all of the things that you have missed and highlight them for you. And then down here, this is a shortcut to the help desk. If you do have technical problems while you're doing your application, the help desk will help. We'll go through resources at the end. So now let's dive into the application. The first section of the application is pathway identification. This is a relatively new section. If you're familiar with the Round 6 application, there's a new regional selection button, and also they've updated the assurances, but it's a very simple step to the application, so let's walk through it now. This is also the screen where we could change the name if we wanted to. We have to choose the region. This is something that we did not used to be able to do. It used to be automatic. And now we choose the region we're applying for and click all the assurances. And like I mentioned, these are new, so review them. They are different, pretty substantially different than they were last year. And that section's done. The next section is lead and partner agencies. This is where we put in the information on our lead agency and any partners. Partner agencies are optional. And just like when you were choosing that lead at the beginning, all the agencies, including participating schools, are listed in NOVA on CDS code. So if you are having problems finding them, because it's a pretty long list, you can always search by CDS code. On this page for round 7, you'll see a few differences. The positive considerations are removed. That's a now standalone section that we'll go over next. You'll also see some details that used to be listed. Rural unemployment designations used to be listed on this page. They're still in there. They're elsewhere in the system, but they're not on this page anymore. You also see they've removed all the K12, SWP, and CTIG prior award questions, and they've very much simplified what's now called recurring investments. This used to be several questions, and now it's one. So let's look at what that looks like. So we've already chosen our lead agency when we started the application. We're not going to change that, but if we did want to change it, we would hit this button here and add them again. You'll see that when I add them, Nova populates a bunch of things. This is where I said it used to show rural and a couple other details. Now it just shows ADA. We have to add participating schools. And like I mentioned, these all have CDS codes if you did have problems finding one. John Muir High. You are required to have at least one participating school. Now that we've added that, you also notice that when I started this application, it automatically assigned me as the project lead contact. If that's good, great. If you do want to change out the project lead contact, you'll notice that I can't remove myself yet. If I did want to change a project lead contact, I'd have to add another one. And you'll see if I do that, the project lead that was in there gets moved down to alternate project lead automatically. And if I want to actually remove that account from the alternate project lead, I have to similarly add someone as the project lead alternate contact. And now you can have multiple alternate leads. You could not have multiple project leads, but you'll notice that once I've added these multiple project lead alternate contacts, I can remove one of them, which I'll do right now. And that way we can move around these contacts and shift them around, just make sure that you're adding before you remove. If we did want to add a partner agency, we choose them by type. I'm going to choose Unified School District for this one. And let's say Long Beach Unified is a partner. Scroll back up a little bit. And you can see Long Beach is now listed here. It has a few details, including the ADA, which gets added to the total. It impacts the bands and the allowable funding for this grant. It is requiring us to say, are they going to be providing funds or services? You can choose both. I'm just going to say services for this one. And we have to choose a participating school from our partner agency. And have at least one contact. We need this project contributor and reporter role for the partner agency. And now we've added our partner agency. One more thing to do on this page, and this is new for round 7. This is the recurring investments section. It's a little different than the way they used to do it, but it's saying that if any of these projects are similar in scope to this application, click this box over here. So let's assume for a second that this 2023 project from Pasadena is relevant, as is this 2021 project from Long Beach. I click 2 of them. You'll notice there's still only one question down here. This box only pops up if you click one of these checkboxes, and only one box pops up if you click multiple. It's just saying for all of the plans that are similar in nature, how is this connected? How are we building? Simpler than the way it used to be on round 6. And now that we've explained how they're similar, we can move on. You'll notice this now says completed, and we go on to positive considerations. Positive considerations is our first section to award points. You'll notice there's 20 points. I'm not going to go through which questions and how much each is worth in this walkthrough. That is located in the RFA if you have questions about that. Just be aware that questions 1 and 2 are pre-filled out, so you won't be able to change those. Those are automatic based on who the lead and partners are. And what's new in round 7, the entire step. This is a simplification of what used to be included in a couple places of this application. They pulled it together and made it a little bit simpler in round 7. So in NOVA, positive considerations is 8 questions. You'll notice the first 2, like I mentioned, are pre-filled out. Depending on who the partner and who the lead is, NOVA has this information and will say for you. And then questions 3 through 8, you will have to fill out yourself. Dropout rate, yes, no. All of these operate the same way, radial buttons, yes, no. These are all detailed in the RFA. And once you complete them all, you'll see this incomplete in the error step or change. Boop. That's now completed. So we've completed positive considerations, and we can move on to the next section, higher ed and collaborative partners. The next section is where we list higher ed or collaborative partners. One thing to remember is that you are required to have at least one community college partner. Could be a college, could be a district. NOVA will enforce you to have a higher ed partner, but it will not enforce you to get a community college partner. And here's what that looks like in NOVA. You'll see that there is a required open space here for a higher ed partner. It does say it up here that that is required to be a college or a CCD. And you'll notice you can choose others, but we're going to do it right, and we're going to choose a college. We're going to choose El Camino. And you'll see now they've chosen El Camino. It pops up some information for them, and I have to add a contact. This project viewer is the required contact for higher ed or collaborative partners. You can also add this project contributor reporter role, which, as we discussed earlier, has limited editing capabilities. But we're going to do what's required and put in this person. And if you do want to have any collaborative partners, we can add them too. Let's say you're having a collaborative partner of the LA Times. They're already in here. You can just add them. Talk about what role they're doing. Let's say they're doing work-based learning experience for students. Add the required contact for them, which is going to be this project viewer role. Now, if we want to add another collaborative partner and they did not exist when we looked them up, let's look up Netflix. Oh, no, Netflix. They've never been a partner on one of these. We can go ahead and create a new one. Click this button here. Netflix, industry, details about them. Hit add, and it would add them to the database. I'm not going to do that because this is production. That is how we add a collaborative partner if they don't already exist. And now that we've added collaborative partner, said what they're going to do, provided contacts for them and the higher ed partner, this section is done. There's no error stepper. We move on to the next section. The next section is problem statement and project objectives. This is a scored section. This is worth 40 points in total. Check the RFA for specific details on how that breaks down between the questions. This section is very different than the way it was in round 6. In round 6, there was one question box for problem statement and one question box for the objectives, and you were required to include multiple elements to those. This year, they've split those boxes into multiple questions for the problem statement and multiple questions for the project objectives. Just fill those out. And with all these new questions, we do have a lot more text boxes available to us. Do not feel the need to use all the available space. 2,500 characters per question is a lot. And here's what it looks like in Nova. You'll see we have 4 questions for each section now. Details on these are included in the RFA. You'll notice, like I said, each box is 2,500 characters, which is a lot. Do not feel the need to maximize that, but put in more information that I am doing. And once you have addressed those questions, you'll see down here, this is where the rural and unemployment rate is listed. It's not editable or anything, that's just kind of where it's displayed. So once you've filled out these 8 questions, 4 for each section, you'll notice this should become, yep, there it goes. Sometimes you gotta click away. Switch to completed, and now this section is done. The next section is industry, sector, and pathways. This is where we choose our sectors we're targeting. You'll notice that when you choose the CDE sectors on the left, the CCC sectors will populate on the right-hand side. It's the same as it was in round 6. So let's say we're working with the New York Times, so we're doing marketing, sales, and arts and media. So in this application, we're working with New York Times. So let's say arts, media, and entertainment, and marketing, sales are our industries. You'll see that this automatically populates over here. It's crosswalked with the colleges sectors. And once we've chosen our sectors, we scroll down and put our pathways and design purpose. For each of these, if we say that this is our design purpose, it's going to ask us which pathways are involved. You'll notice that because I chose these specific sectors up here, those are the sectors that the associated pathways are available to choose. So I would choose whatever pathways I'm targeting. And let's say I was also trying to talk about middle school career exploration. I choose pathways for this one too. And this section is complete, and this workflow step is complete. The next section is the work plan. This is a scored section, 40 points. Be aware that there's some functionality in here where clicking quality strategies will populate the questions about those strategies. So follow-up questions there. And be aware that for round 7, they've removed some of the elements that used to be in the quality strategy section into its own additional narrative section. We'll talk about what that means in a second. And they've also added some more information to the additional narrative section. So this is the work plan page. Like I mentioned, clicking one of these will populate questions below that are specific to that strategy. You are required to choose at least one of them. You can pick all 4 if you want. And the big change here between round 7 and round 6 is that down here we have this new additional narrative section. It talks about partner roles and responsibilities, total number of students, and student supports. These questions used to be embedded with the questions for each of these 4 categories, which means they had to be answered 4 times. In round 7, they split them off into their own section down here. You'll notice they're now missing. And now the questions associated with each of the strategies, there's only 2 of them. Describe your work, and describe outcomes. So it should be a little bit simpler. You do have to answer 2 questions for each of the boxes you choose here. Let's choose these 2, which means there's going to be 2 questions for curriculum and instruction, and then 2 sections for post-secondary transition and completion. And then we answer these additional narrative sections that are going to be applicable to the entire application, not any specific strategy. And then this is the same as it was in round 6. These are the additional CTE funds leverage to support this work. Choose whatever is appropriate, and once we have, this section is now complete. And the next section is the budget section. This is worth 10 points. I always like to remind people to use the budget match summary section up at the top. It's really helpful to make sure that you are putting everything in correctly. And up here, you'll also see the max request amount that is contingent on the ADA totals. The details are in the RFA. And the other thing I like to point out is that when we put in the partner agency details earlier in the application, we were asked a question whether that partner agency would be contributing funds or services. If you chose funds, they will be included in the budget. If you just chose services, they will not be. So that toggle switch on that previous section will impact how the budget page shows up. And for round 7, it's an entirely new budget process. It's a much simpler process. We fill out a table instead of going piece by piece. And we also have the ability to say which agencies are doing match so that not every agency has that section available. So this is what the budget looks like in Nova. Like I mentioned up here, you have this budget match summary. And on this page, you'll see we have the Pasadena Unified budget. They are the lead agency. And this is a new table. You say how much they're going to spend per year, calculates the totals on the sides, and then populates down here when we enter amounts, populates descriptions of those amounts. These descriptions are throughout the entirety of the term. They're not specific to a year, but they are specific to Pasadena Unified. So this is saying what Pasadena Unified is going to do with their $1,000 in Object Code 1000. So I've quickly put in some data, and we now have a grant budget of $871,000. You'll notice that because I put things into these fields up here in this table, the corresponding descriptions have popped up. And this is where we see the budget for our partner agencies if we've chosen them to be a funded part of this application on that lead and partner agency's workflow step. And let's say they're getting about $150,000 of the total. We'd have to describe what they're doing with that money as well. And now we say which institution is providing the match. Now let's say that Long Beach Unified is providing the entirety of the match. And they're doing it all in Object Code 5000. I'm doing this very simply for the sake of this demo, but if Pasadena was also providing match, we would choose them as well. Scroll back up. Scroll back up. There it is. The match is included underneath the budget for each institution, so you might have to find it. But let's say they're also contributing match of $250. Now that we have enough match, we've exceeded our match by a little bit, and that's okay. And the last thing I'll point out here is if we do add indirect amounts down here, you'll notice that this changes. And that percentage over there changes based on this number right here, not the total amount you can get. It's based on the current total budget and how much of that is a percentage of the indirect. So the maximum's 4, you'll see I put in 40,000, that's allowable. I do have to describe the indirect now that I've added it to the budget. But now that I've done that, the budget section is done. The last thing I'll point out to you is that at the bottom there is this useful summary. We can see across all the partners how much is being spent. This is also new with round 7. And now let's talk about the last section, supporting documents. This is very different than round 7. They've removed a lot of the old required supporting documents, and now there's just 2. The statement of assurance, which is required for lead and partners, and then the letter of commitment, which is required for the CCC partner. Letters of commitment from other partners are expected, they're not required. So this is what that looks like in Nova. You'll see we have 3 required documents here, the statement of assurance from our lead, or from our lead here and our partner, and then that letter of commitment from our CCC partner. So to fill those out, you'll see we have to choose the document type and say which institution it's with. Nova will not actually require you to upload anything specifically. You just tell them what you're uploading. Now you don't have to remove this window. You can just keep uploading stuff here if you want. So let's say we also had El Camino College's letter of commitment that they're required to have. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and take on Long Beach Unified's statement of assurance as well. So once we've uploaded our 3 required documents, you can see all these checkboxes are green. If we did want to add additional letters of commitment, because you know that these are not required but expected, we would do the same thing. Let's say we were doing a Long Beach Unified letter of commitment. You'll see it says optional, but we can still upload it. And then if you want to delete any of these, you can scroll over and delete them using these buttons here, add new ones, change them around. And the last step on this application is we submit it. A couple tips, if you do want to share, there's a share button I'll show you. You can unsubmit and submit. You can unsubmit and submit if you want to make changes all you want. Just make sure that your application is submitted at the deadline. And then if you are still trying to find stuff you haven't completed yet, keep in mind that error stepper exists. It's a good way to find unfinished things in the application. And this is the preview and submit page in Nova. This is where you see a preview of the entire application all the way down. Like I mentioned, if you do want to share that with someone, you can hit this share button. It'll allow you to either email it to another Nova user or just download a PDF and email it to them yourself. But now that we're all done, you can see everything on this left-hand side is marked as completed. This submit button is available to us. It's lit up blue. And the last thing we're going to do is hit submit. This button will pop up here just for some final assurances. And then once you hit submit here, you're all done. Now, like I mentioned, if you do want to unsubmit your application, you can do so here. Just go in, you'll see the workflow is gone because this is submitted. I can't change anything. But oh no, I missed something up or I forgot something. I can come back, I can hit unsubmit. And like I mentioned, just make sure if you are changing things to go ahead and resubmit it by the deadline. Otherwise, it will not be eligible. And if you do run into problems with your application, there's a few support resources. The Chancellor's Office has the Nova Help Desk that we'll go over. There's also Chancellor's Office resources for the K12 program, as well as resources specifically for their RFAs and application. And your regional consortia also provides a lot of resources. So let's take a look what those look like. This is the Chancellor's Office RFA page. You'll see that this is all of the detailed information like the budget match templates, scoring rubrics for this particular application. The Chancellor's Office also has a page with general SWP information, and your regional consortia has this website with a lot of information specific to K12 SWP in LA. And the last thing I'll show you is the Nova Help Desk. If you are having issues, you can click here like I mentioned before, or you can click down here. Either way, it'll take you to the Nova Help Desk. This is run by the Chancellor's Office. Fill this out, hit submit, and the help desk will usually respond within a day. Thank you very much.